Thank you. Well, that was a hard act to follow. Laughter is the best medicine. So now you have me. And because it's after lunch and it's drawing to a close, there's only one speaker after me, and they're going to be giving their testimony, and I know that's just so heartfelt and warm. But I'm going to do something that I hope gets you a little interested. And so let me make sure I know how to do this. Nope. Yeah, it takes a second, I think. So anyway, I'm very glad to be here. I think this has just been a marvelous day. And again, as we have thanked Dawn several times, but it's just a pleasure to be able to listen to this information. And now I have the opportunity to share a little bit from my perspective, which is from a nurse's perspective. Huh, isn't that interesting? Well, what that slide was supposed to say... no, it's not showing up.
Up there?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll work on it while you talk.
Okay.
No, it's not that.
It's a slide. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So anyway, we are at the Women's Integrative Health Conference. And I took a look at the goal, which is up there, but because I'm a nurse, I'm always prepared. The goal that was in the flyer said that the reason for doing this was to provide opportunities for those with cancer and other chronic health issues to learn and explore natural and evidence-based, non-toxic healing therapies and tools to make the journey easier. So I just wanted to focus a little bit on chronic health issues. And as we know, this is a very simple definition, but chronic health, illness, chronic disease is basically having something for more than 3 months. We know that it's really something that you can't catch from somebody else, generally speaking. And essentially it is illnesses that we're pretty aware of, such as cancer, heart disease, stroke and congestive heart failure in particular, arthritis, COPD, and diabetes. And so what we really know about these particular instances is that you don't always have symptoms when you have chronic illness. Symptoms come and they go. Sometimes they get better, sometimes they get worse. That's one of the factors of chronic illness. Another thing we know about it, it's financially draining and emotionally draining usually. A very important concept to take into consideration. And that with chronic health issues, we have limitations sometimes that we don't like. We have sometimes major disability. We certainly know that it ruins our quality of life. And so that's basically what this conference is about, and how to get to a point where you can manage and adapt to those certain problems. And so that's really what I'm here to kind of help you with, because as I've heard different speakers, I think I'll be able to also give you some more information that will help you. But I do just want to read some statistics, just 3 of them, that really pertain to us as women. The American Heart Association reported, and this is an older statistic, it's 2013, that almost 3,000 women died of heart disease. That's pretty significant. And we still know that it's the major killer of both men and women in our country today. The second comes from the National Diabetic Statistical Report through the CDC. And this is very concerning to me. 11.7 million women in the United States have diabetes. 11.7 million. 9.4 million of those women know they have it. They're probably on some form of treatment. But it's the other 3.4 million that either don't know it or they're pre-diabetic, they're on metformin. And so that's a large cohort already joining, the male population as well as our children. And so that's very, very concerning. And the last one is that the American Cancer Society, in their prediction for 2017, said that nearly 850,000 women in this country would be diagnosed in the year 2017 with the 3 major cancers, which is lung cancer, breast cancer, and colon cancer. And so that's significant. So just look at those numbers. And I know as I look out in this audience that some of us are facing those challenges with chronic illness. Some of us know sisters, mothers, aunts, grandmothers, friends that are also in the same boat. And if you're not, unfortunately, unless we concentrate more on wellness and prevention, that those statistics may eventually affect each one of us. And I think you've gotten from the speakers some wonderful information about how to maybe go down a different track. All right, so I have tools for the journey. And so you may wonder what's up here. So here's my tools. Because as Dawn mentioned, I'm a nurse educator. I educated nurses since 1980, came here to Klamath Falls, Oregon from Southern California, and taught when it was Oregon Institute of Technology's nursing program. And then it melted into Oregon Health and Science University's nursing program. But because I also wanted to be a nurse, just not being a nurse educator, I wanted to be credible, I've done a lot of different things in this space and to keep my practice current in addition to my full-time job. I've worked in the nursing home for 3 years because I really wanted to know what working with that population was all about. I worked home health for many, many, many years, and so got to see beyond the hospital into the home. And I was a guest in those homes, whereas in the hospital, you tend to be our guests. And so that was a different perspective. But after my initials, I'm a WOCN, which is a wound and ostomy incontinence nurse. And so what I did was I acted as a consultant with my own business to help patients in many agencies throughout the basin on how to manage their wounds, which is very common in diabetes. Also ostomies, very common in cancer due to colon cancer, bladder cancer, etc. And then started a wound and ostomy clinic at the time, Rural West Medical Center, and now it's Sky Lakes. So that's my background. So I have seen the continuum of different places where these health issues pop up. But as a nurse educator, it's really important for me to educate. And so this part of the goal was tools, and we're on a journey. So what I'm doing now is showing you the toolbox. You did get a handout in a plastic sleeve, and that's for you, but also you may want to even pull it out as we go along, and I'll point out some of the things that are in it. Okay. So I've broken this up kind of into 4 concepts. So the first one, it's not showing, is it? Nope. All right, so we won't use the slides and I'll just go with the flow. Okay, the first concept is information. That's what you've been hearing, is get to the information, do your research, study. And so it's very important, and I believe in information, but sometimes it's quite mind-boggling, even for myself. All you have to do is a Google search, and brings you pages upon pages of information. And so in my toolbox, I have a hammer. And basically, this is what I wanted to address information, is why I think it should be a hammer. Or this is another type of hammer. It's a mallet. So a hammer is designed to do basically, driving in nails or pulling out nails. A basic claw hammer like this one is metal, and it has a very precise round point, so you can do precise work. The mallet, on the other hand, cannot do precise work because it's rather large, but it is very good for soft chiseling. And then the last hammer is this bad boy, which is the sledgehammer, which I think is great for breaking up and destroying. But the whole point is a hammer is specifically designed for what it's supposed to do. And as a general contractor or you as DIYers, select your tools based upon what they can do. And if you select right, it's going to be functioning very well. If you select wrong, like trying to drive a nail with a sledgehammer, you can have a lot of problems. So doesn't that sound like information? If you have the right information, then you can certainly make the right choices. Goodness. So we need information, and I'm sure you all feel the need for information is it informs us, it helps with us, helps us to make decisions about our treatment. It gives us options, but it's mind-boggling. And so I've heard people say today about going out and getting information so that they can present it to their healthcare providers. But how do you do that, and how do you make sure that it's good information? So in your toolbox, the first page or so is really looking at sites that should have good information. And what I really wanted to have on the transparency or on the PowerPoint is I want you to be able to find information and make sure that you are getting what you say that or think that you're getting, or be able to discern. I think that's my big word, discern. So when you go to a web page, for instance, the first question you should be asking yourself is, who in the world is writing this? Who is it? Is it a person? Is it a medical professional or healthcare provider? Is it an agency? Is it an educational institution? Is it a marketer? Or we have to be real honest, there's people out there that simply are there to make money and scam. And so it's very important. So what I would suggest, most good websites, when you go up at the top, you should see About Us. Click on that because that tells you about us. It may tell you who's writing it or at least who's supporting it. And so what you want to be able to do is look at that. And you might have to Google again so you can tell what are their credentials. Is this really coming from a really good source? So that's one important thing to do. Second thing is, when was it published? We would tell students that anything 5 years or older is really to a certain extent outdated. And certainly in some of these medical areas, what cancer treatment was 5 years ago is not what it is today. Now, not to say that you can't look at something that's 10 years older, but be real vigilant in looking to make sure that it's current information. You may find that in very strange places. It can be at the top, but if it's not mentioned, then you want to really find out how current that this is. Where do they get the information? One thing can just simply be in the address. So if you have an edu after your address, that means it's coming from usually an educational academic setting. If you have .org, that means it's coming from either a private institution or a nonprofit. If you have essentially com.com, that could be coming from just about anywhere. And the other thing to realize is that because we have worldwide access, is you can be getting lots of things from other countries, which has a lot of good information, but may be limited because it's not something that is available to us here. So those addresses usually have like .ca, which is Canada, and other places. So when you see those in the addresses, it kind of gives you an idea of where it's coming from. You want to also know if it's been edited or updated. You will find on very good websites that they will say that this information was updated January 2017. And so some of the information was older, but they went back in, edited it, and changed what was maybe not correct or added to what was new information. So that's really important in your web-based search. There is a company, it's not a company, it's actually an institution in Switzerland, and it's called Health on the Net. And what they've done is they've taken on the mission to examine health-related internet websites and information with a very strict criteria that helps them go ahead and really see if this is credible. And if they give their stamp of approval, then you pretty much know it's been vetted through a lot of scrutiny and it's good information. So in a nutshell, really look at your websites. Just don't take everything at face value. Many times there's there's studies that are actually indicated or listed within the articles that you might be reading, and that's really a good thing because you can even find those and see what it really says, because usually sometimes it's 1 or 2 sentences, but there's much more to be said in the article. So that's kind of a tip with regards to looking at the internet. And just be wary, but also take it to your healthcare provider. Get another opinion that might help you understand, okay? So what I did on these resources, I put profit and nonprofit, and of course one of the big federal ones, and I am using the cancer model. So my disclosure is this is pretty much what I have here is about cancer, but you know what? What I just gave you about the internet can go with any source. And then you can Google organizations that might have something to do with a healthcare problem that you're interested in. But what I did is also not only give you the website. I know there's a lot of people that don't have access to computers or don't feel comfortable using them. And the good old-fashioned, there are telephone numbers here, as well as addresses where you can write to get information. So I really hope that you find these particularly helpful. All right, so we're going to go on to the second tool, which is communication. I'm going to kill myself on that sledgehammer. Okay, this is my drill. I've always wanted to do that, you know. Anyway, a drill, this is an electric drill. And a drill does lots of different things, correct? It can bore through a hole. Depends on what type of bit you put on it. It can sand. It can grind. It can have a screwdriver bit, and you can pull screws out or pull screws in. So the reason why I picked oh, it's on. It's on. Okay. There's my screwdriver. So anyway, what you missed essentially was just a very simple definition about communication, which, you know, I'll essentially let you read up there. But with the drill, communication is a variable thing. Communication has all sorts of ways in which we do communication or how we receive communication. But it is so very, very important when we negotiate through, it is working. So what gets in the way of the communication, I kind of wanted you to take a look at that. Certainly, and I can't see because of aging eyes, but one of the biggest things that gets in the way is our emotions and being totally overwhelmed. And so you have to understand that about yourself, or perhaps you're going through something and you're not the person that has the diagnosis, is to understand how that can really impact. And some of the suggestions of having ways to kind of de-stress and realize that you don't have to be in that big of a hurry, and certainly if it's an emergency. I really could understand what Dawn was saying about the fact of how long it took, but believe me, when a cancer cell takes 8 to 10 years, a couple of weeks of being able to get all your ducks in a row, so you have the questions that you need to ask, that's also essential. So look at it that, you know, certainly you want that thing sometimes out of your body or to immediately find treatment. There might be some other work that you need to do. So communication is one. Another one is we have financial limitations and restrictions. And what I mean by that for communication is many times we feel we can't afford it, so why bother? Or, you know, it's overwhelming that, you know, it's going to cost so much. And so when you have those dollar signs in front, it's very difficult to exchange good information. So you need just to be aware of that. The complexity of treatment options, if any of you have been through this, you know, it's like now it used to be pretty clear. It was like one treatment option, maybe 2. Now for certain situations, it can be, you know, 5 to 10 different options that you can take. And so when you yourself, you know, are feeling that, you know, which one do I choose, it's very hard sometimes to have good communication. Your own health literacy, you know, I went to school, I have all these years of experience, and believe me, I am still learning. I am still trying to understand when new things come down the pike. And so trying to find that advocate that kind of can help you understand what you're being presented with. And then certainly, as I'm squinting, is the lack of experience with the healthcare system. It's horrendous. And if you even negotiate within our own community, but if you have to travel elsewhere or go up to OHSU, it's a system beyond. And so hopefully that there are really good navigators of that system that can help. But I think the reason for this slide is I want you to realize that you kind of have to understand what does affect you. Things to do to improve your communication. Certainly what I did is give you in your handout 2 different types of questions. Because I heard people say ask questions. But in my experience, I often am asked, I don't know what to ask. I don't know what questions I need to know. So you'll find those handouts that if you're newly diagnosed, here's some questions that you might think about. Take a highlighter and highlight the ones that are specific to your needs. Another thing that you might want to do is bring someone else. I can't tell you how important that is to bring somebody else, because sometimes you can only focus on hearing the diagnosis, and then everything after that is so difficult. And it's even hard for someone, maybe it's a husband or maybe it's a daughter or whatever who's there with you. They'll also be struggling, but hopefully between the two that you'll get the essence. And if you don't, continue to ask questions. Don't feel like, that's, I should know this, or, they don't have time for this. They already told me, they'll think I'm, not listening or that I'm stupid. No, you need to ask questions and sometimes change the way the question is being asked. That's helpful. And remember, you make the decisions based on your values and your preferences and essentially who you are as individuals. And that's so important. And it's been brought up is that sometimes there's that power differential between the healthcare provider and yourself. You are still the one that is going to be going through this process. You are still the one that is paying for this process, paying for services. And so you really need to be that advocate for yourself. And then the last one basically is don't rush. Don't rush. If you need to take time to get as much of your resources and your ideas together. All right, so we're moving on. So the next one, obviously, is the screwdriver. This screwdriver is such a simple tool. I'm sure almost everyone has had it and probably used it. And that's why I put it with participation. Although it's simple, it's going to basically, again, screw in a screw or take one out. You can't really do too much more than that. But when you have a manual thing like this, you have to work. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm putting a screwdriver in the little slot where the screw is, I don't always get it right. It needs a certain amount of pressure and it needs a certain amount of work. So that's why I selected the screwdriver for participation. But I have a tool belt here. And I love the tool belt because you know what this implies to me is I'm strapping on my tool belt and that means work. And so in participation, your healthcare provider is working for you, but the work is going to have to come essentially, from you. So what do I mean by that? I'm like multitasking. You're going to have to work as a team. Now, some situations it may only be your primary provider, but I really see that we need to develop a team. So maybe it's a doctor and patient. That's really not a team. And so hopefully we begin to see that we need more people on the team. We need nutritionists. It might be with nursing. It's with, we might need a social worker. We might need finance to be able to help us figure out how we're going to pay for all of this. It's a multitude of people that need to be a part of the team. And then the second thing, which I think is so important with this, is how you keep track of your information. You can get a binder, you can get a planner, you can get a yellow pad, whatever you use to keep yourself organized. Or maybe you haven't been organized. You've got to be organized with this. And so I put in there a couple of suggestions on how to keep yourself organized. One is the ASCO treatment plan, which is really wonderful. If you take a look at it, you've been diagnosed, okay? The date of diagnosis, what's the stage? What are all those big words? It needs to be written down. When you go for a visit, what's the purpose of that visit? What was accomplished in that visit? What are you going to have to do after the visit? And so just having these things in a binder keeps track of information, because during this journey, you may have good days and you can have bad days. You can have good weeks, you have bad weeks, but you have something that gives you a basis of where you've been and more importantly, where you're going. So it highly suggests that you put together some sort of treatment plan. Okay? And the very last tool, but not the least, I picked the wrench. The wrench and support. One thing about a wrench, it usually is going to tighten or untighten like a bolt. But the nice thing about a wrench is essentially it's going to make sure, and it's also part of the operator's responsibility, to make sure that we don't over-tighten, but also that we don't under-tighten. Because if we do either, the support of which that bolt is in or that is not going to be a support, for whether it's, 4x4 or wherever that bolt is. So a wrench illustrates, in my opinion, support. Oh, before we go into that, I wanted to let you know about, when I'm going back to participation, I want to tell you about an app. And it's called cancer.net. So let me just get up on the phone. It is marvelous if you're phone savvy. And so what it has questions. And so if I were to click on questions, I can write my own question. So it's a reminder to ask that at a visit. But it also gives you suggested questions. And so one of it is clinical trials. So if you have a question about clinical trials, it'll say, what is a clinical trial? You need to ask that of your provider. Will you be recommending me a clinical trial and why? So this is an app. And so essentially it gives you tons of ways to ask questions. Another thing about it, which I really appreciate, is symptom management. So it has symptoms, and if I click on that, it has ability to click, it's got symptoms of all sorts: constipation, diarrhea, it's got physical symptoms, it's got emotional, mental symptoms. So you click on that and the date and time in which you are experiencing it. Because how many times do you end up in a physician's office and you say, I've got, constipation, but you haven't been able to really describe it. Is it one time? Is it all the time? This keeps a monitoring situation for you so you can give much better advice. So when I found this app, I thought, this is wonderful. It even has medications. It keeps track of your medications so you can, hit your app when you've taken those medications. It has questions about your medications. And then the last thing, it has information. It covers over 120 types of cancer and gives lots of information. So, it's just at the fingertips of those who prefer to use this technology. So I didn't want to miss that. All right, so when we go to support, there's things that you need to do, and I've heard this from several of our speakers who certainly have gone through it themselves, because I can sit and I can stand and I can talk with each one of you, but I do not know exactly what your challenges are completely. I can give you information, I can tell you that this would be maybe the best course, but it really comes from people who have experienced this that can provide another level. But as you can see up above here, there's just things that you think about: expressing yourself, looking for the positive that was just brought up. Don't try to be upbeat when you're not. A lot of us try to have that facade saying, I'm feeling horrible inside, but I'm not going to let anybody know, because if I let someone know, then maybe they might see that I have a weakness or I should be stronger and I'm not. So try not to always put on the happy face, because really it's important for people to serve you or for people to help you. They really need to know exactly where you're at. You can choose when to talk about your cancer. I think that's real important. And I just want to bring up the fact that there are many challenges when you are diagnosed with cancer or other chronic health diseases is how do you talk to family? And if you have children, how do you talk with your children? Employment, how do you talk with your employer? Maybe it's your boss, maybe it's the people that you work with. And I think someone even mentioned that, people put a lot of things on Facebook, but this may not be the best place for you, or it may be. I'm just saying is that you really need to determine, and it's up to you. You don't have, just because you've been diagnosed, you don't have to go out and tell the world. It's very important for you to take the time to figure out who that world needs to be. Finding ways to relax, look for things you enjoy, and the last one is looking at what you can control. So many times our energies are put into things that we cannot control, such as we are just stressing about the diagnosis itself. That cannot be controlled. But then you begin to look maybe through information, communication, and participation, you can figure out what's going to give you the best control. In your last resource, it actually appears, I think, on the very first page on the back, are some very interesting resources that you might look at if you are struggling sort of with the support that's necessary. The Immerman's Angels and the Cancer Hope Network, you can access them via computer or phone, and they have a 24-hour service that provides people who've had your same cancer access to. So you can talk to them. You can find out what their journey was, and it's by phone. And I think that's important because we do have local, and I want to support our local support groups, but some people don't like support groups. They would rather be a little anonymous. And so if you can be talking to someone via phone, or sometimes it can be through FaceTime and other sorts of things that really don't know you and can treat you objectively, sometimes that might be the best thing for you. The last one is Cancer Care, which I just think it's a wonderful site because it provides you with professional coping. So you will be able to speak to a medical social worker almost like on a 24/7, and they can help you with those emotional needs as well as the financial needs. So these are but a few, and as you do your search, I know that you'll come out with more, and you can add it, to your list and hopefully share. So to end, I haven't seen, am I at 0? Oh, I wasn't looking at you. Well, here I am, it's my last slide. So what we've built together with my little toolbox and all my tools, I'm hoping is our hope. And hope is built on the support that we give one another, on the information that we can use to help. And again, I appreciate this opportunity to share, and I hope that this was helpful to you. Thank you.